Now, when it comes to boss battles in video games, it's something akin to the world of winemaking. If a dev takes their time, refines the process, and executes the delivery, well, it's going to be a heady brew that is sure to warm the soul. But if it's implemented with apathy over passion, you're basically just drinking Vimto with 10 shots of vodka dropped in it from a great height. Today, we're celebrating the top of the trope over the tripe and looking at some examples of boss battles that challenge the player in new ways, offered up the most memorable experiences, or just downright left us with such a dumb smile on our faces that it's impossible to deny their impact. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the best video game boss battles of 2022. Oh, and by the way, spoiler alert for the following games. Number 8, Star Scourge Radahn, Elden Ring. Now, when it comes to picking a favourite boss from Elden Ring, there's bound to be pushback from the community. Some will die on the hill that hardest is best, others will vouch for a less challenging but more thematically unique encounter, and then there are those that have love pillows printed with the Dung Eater's face on them, aka the choice of true beings of culture. We are an eclectic bunch, to say the least. However, one boss most definitely stands out from the pack because it seems to tick so many boxes that there are few that would ever argue against the quality of its craft, even if it not might be their personal favourite, and that mountain of muscle is the one and only Radahn. Not only is Radahn's design beyond the pale, what with his massive frame sitting astride his tiny steed, but his I'll be back in comet form attack is one that left many players' jaws on the floor in both surprise and because he'd blown their avatar to pieces. Add to this the ability to summon in a ton of NPCs to help with this festival of fighting, and you have a boss that's as challenging or as mosh pit crazy as you want it to be. Although you definitely need to go full support at least once, in my opinion, just to see the bodies charging up that hill, because this and the overall fight are some of the most memorable moments in the entirety of Elden Ring. And that's saying something. Number 7, Super Shredder, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge. Now, sometimes a boss need not be an arduous challenge in order to become notorious enough for a list like this, as after all, painting the Mona Lisa with only brushes that have been stabbed into your eyeballs sure is a trial, but not exactly one I'll be volunteering for anytime soon. No, what makes a great boss battle is how the devs balance that challenge with the concept of fun, and sometimes that factor alone can elevate a standard boss encounter to a brilliant one. Case in point, Super Shredder from the outstandingly fun TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which never once feels like it forgets what this title is all about, that being a sugar rush explosion of over-the-top combat wrapped in the nostalgia of a Saturday morning cartoon. His design is reminiscent of his snares and ill-fated live-action outings, resembling the sort of cheese grater that you'd find on the dark web, and holds nothing back when the battle starts. But what makes this fight so refreshing is that it actively pushes the player to use their evasive skills as much as their honed combat practices. If you try to go toe-to-toe with Super Shredder, you'll be left in tatters within moments. So what follows is a tense game of dodging and jumping to avoid his attacks, and then coalescing on his weakened state to poke a bow staff up his nostrils. Set to a fist-pumping soundtrack, this battle feels like it's been decades in the making, effortlessly giving fans of the series a power fantasy for the ages. Number 6, the Paradise Protection Protocol, Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. Now, at its core, the theme of the Pokemon franchise is of overcoming overwhelming odds, as if you're going to become the very best, you're going to need to go through a lot of trials and personal growth to get there. And if there's any mainline entry Pokemon title that has been up against the wall recently, it's Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, a duo of games that's been rightly raked over the coals by both critics and fans alike for its rushed production, shoddy frame rates, and a seeming desire to play it safe after the prior Poke experience Arceus sought to shake things up. However, that just speaks to the sheer quality of this pair's final showdown with the Paradise Protection Protocol, that it not only is a great boss battle for the franchise, but it also is appearing on a list like this. What makes this confrontation so memorable is the lead up to the clash, in which it's revealed that Professor Sada isn't actually the real one at all. It turns out that the professor actually died in a prior accident, and what stands before you is a robotic body with an AI comprised of the professor's memories. As the AI leads you to the time machine deep within the lab, she reveals that as soon as you try tampering with the machine, she will try to defeat you, as the lab's safety protocols will override her programming. It's a terrifically sad start to the battle to take down an unwilling foe like this, but what follows is a real challenge in the form of high-level Pokemon that can dish out punishment quickly to an unprepared team. And yet, it only gets better after the first phase, as now with support from your friends arriving at the lab, you get a legendary Pokemon showdown for the ages, in which, thanks to the support of your team and the bonds that you've built along the way, you can finally legendary beasts' true battle form, making for a cathartic moment and an even more touching goodbye to one of the best written bosses in all of Pokemon. Number 5. The Librarian Tunic. For a game that looks as cute as it does, I don't think that anyone expected Tunic to hand this much of the player's own arse back to them. Across your furry and foxy playtime, you'll encounter numerous little Gribblies to dispatch, and may even fancy yourself as some sort of real adventurer as you cleave through them in two with only a few hits. But that all changes when you meet the Librarian boss, which, while not being the final boss of the game, is definitely the point at which many players had a quiet word with themselves, usually comprising of what the just happened. The stage is quite literally set when you arrive at the top of the Librarian's tower and battle them within this small arena, meaning that you're immediately on the back foot thanks to the tight constraints. This immediately gets more challenging when the Librarian attempts to shush you to death with bursts of magic power, which cover vast portions of the small arena, as do the summons that it brings in to get the job done. Throughout all of this, you're left either dodging or attempting to hit the bloody bastard who refuses to engage you fair and square. This is a game of cat and mouse, albeit subbed for other animals in this instance, and is a taut experience that is a significant step up in challenge, yet thanks to its unique attack style and beautiful setting, becomes a boss battle for the history books. Number 4. Mutated Odor, Thymusia. Now don't feel too bad if the Dark Souls-esque indie title Thymusia passed you by this year, but trust me, deep within this little gem is a boss battle that is diamond hard and shines brilliantly as a result. And this is because it rewards the player for using the core principles established within Thymusia's combat, that being that Corvus can use attacks to chip away at opponents' health, but must use more powerful attacks to delete these depleted sections from their opponent's health bar. Leave the foe for too long and you'll see their health refill, creating a tense atmosphere as you have to balance dipping in to chip away and evading attacks that will wipe you out in 1 or 2 hits. And it's through the Mutated Odor battle that players will find this beautiful rhythm or die over and over trying to master it. You see, this boss attacks relentlessly and is deadly at any range, meaning that even if you're trying to catch your breath, you'll be under constant pressure. Therefore, it becomes clear that the only way to truly get the better of him is to stand toe to tentacle and deflect his incoming attacks, which again will chip away at his health whilst also protecting you, but only if you get the button prompts exactly right. It's a feeling not too dissimilar to the epic razor wire clashes that you'd find in Sekiro, and as such creates a pulse-pounding battle that will leave you reeling for hours after. In many ways, it's a shame that this is Thymusia's best boss battle by a long margin, as the other encounters fail to evoke this same level of threat and the same level of satisfaction upon completion. Number 3. Chef Saltbaker, Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course. Now, the moment that I beat Chef Saltbaker in the long-awaited and much anticipated Cuphead DLC, The Delicious Last Course, I couldn't help but feel a confusing mixture of euphoria and sadness. Now, strangely though, both of these emotions came from the same core thought, that this boss was so well crafted and meticulously animated that there wasn't ever going to be anything that felt this good to fight or looked this good whilst kicking my ass. The excitement of finally beating this multi-staged boss was met with sadness that many other video game developers likely wouldn't be able to replicate this delicate recipe for success on show here. Now, Saltbaker is a brilliant example of difficulty ramping that never feels cheap, as it lays out its mechanics to the player within the first few seconds of each phase and simply adds or tweaks them across the section. I didn't walk into a beatdown that I didn't see coming, but boy howdy did it take me multiple attempts to get through this gauntlet. And yet, despite having a full buffet of pain, I was more than happy to dive back in to see the outstanding animation, the brilliant mashup of styles, and of course, to serve this baker his own buns. Number 2. Thor, God of War, Ragnarok. I say when we're done. This is most likely going to be the video game quote of 2022, and with bloody good reason, as in a game filled with outstanding boss battles, the continued war of attrition against the mighty Thor in God of War Ragnarok hits like a bloody hammer. Throughout this title, you are plagued by Thor's degrading attitude, his resentment towards Kratos and his son, and his notion of being a destroyer and nothing more. And while the player arguably has a more emotional climax in the second clash with the God of Thunder, Commander, the first battle, well, it's something different altogether. Much like with Boulder in 2018's spectacular reworking of the franchise, Thor surprises Kratos with power that completely overshadows his own. With one swift motion, he knocks our hero into the air so high and with such minimal effort that he's able to deliver an entire speech about blood debts before the pair hit the ground. In that moment, it's clear that Thor is going to be one tough bastard. Something confirmed when he shrugs off a deep axe wound and repeated blows to the face. Oh, and also the fact that he straight up kills you before then shocking you back to life, which is one of the best fake-outs in recent memory. The opening battle might not be as technically challenging as the final clash, but the impact that Thor leaves, as well as the way that he literally leaves, absconding after awakening the anger in Kratos, leaves the player scrabbling for more, whilst reeling at the sheer might that this large lad packs. And number 1, Yang, Sifu. Now I think it goes without saying, but action brawler title Sifu is one hell of a special game. Coming out of relative obscurity, this title took the world by storm thanks to its emotive but minimalistic approach to animation, its wonderfully concise narrative arc, and of course, by having some of the best combat in any action game ever. Sifu really is a game that demands your attention. Each of the boss battles found within offers a brilliant twist on the formula, and thanks to the second stage of each warping reality in some form or another, becomes a psychedelic trip and a half. And speaking of trips, that's exactly what won't work when it comes to fighting the final boss Yang, who breaks the very tactics that you've been relying on up until this point. For you see, as is expected from a man who is able to kill your father with relative ease, this is a figure who knows every trick and every move you're going to throw at him, and so such tactics simply do not work in the slightest. What you have then is a test of raw skill in a battle that will leave you utterly sweating. Yang takes no prisoners, he wastes no motion, and he demands the very best of you, and then some, making this a beautiful moment of zen in which your inputs will flow from attack to defense, from strike to counter, all as one. To defeat Yang, you must truly master Sifu, and to forgive him, you must truly master your own concepts of violence and revenge. It is, quite simply, one of the most perfect boss battles ever. And there we go, my friends. Those were the best video game boss battles of 2022. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram, where it's @RetroJ, but the O is a 0. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.